Hello folks, Alex here. This is Alex Unabridged, and today I've got my wrap up for Shorty September. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. So Shorty September then. This was a great event. I thoroughly enjoyed what I've read. I didn't get through as much as I'd hoped. September turned out to be just one of those months. I thought I was going to have loads of time and then I really didn't. So I'd put, I think, just under 30 shorts onto a wheel of choice that I've been spinning throughout the month. You may have seen some of my progress on YouTube Shorts, and then I've just been spinning the wheel independently, off camera, for some others. So I managed to get through 11 books or short stories for the month. So that's not bad. Not as many as I would like to, but it's still not bad. And what I did read was generally very good. There were no stinkers in here, which is always good. So let's crack straight into what I got through then. So the first one that I read that the wheel spat out was I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison, which came out of this collection of stories edited by Isaac Asimov. This is Hugo winners from 1968 to 1970. And I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a story that I'd wanted to read for a long time, ever since I kind of came across the premise of it. I thought, oh, that sounds dark and wonderful. And so finally I got, I've had a chance to read it. This is a dystopian science fiction short story that delves into kind of the horrors of AI. This is set in a post-apocalyptic world. And the story follows some survivors of that apocalypse who are trapped by a malevolent supercomputer called AM. And AM basically tortures them. That's how it gets its kicks, essentially. That is its pleasure. It wants to just perpetually torture them. Each of the characters is burdened with their own kind of psychological and physical issues, flaws, etc. And AM has made them all virtually immortal, so they can't kill themselves. They can't end their own suffering. And they've been suffering for centuries. It's just this is the game that AM plays. It's just perpetual torture. So it's dark. It's a dark one to start with. It's bleak. But having said that, I loved it. I thought this was brilliant. This is a 5 out of 5 for me, without a doubt. The writing of this, I think, is masterful in terms of how much information and how much sort of feeling, if you like, Ellison packs into such a short space of time on the page. It's only about, I think, 15 pages. I mean, it's very small, packed text in here. It's about 15 pages. But the amount of stuff that's in it is just, and it doesn't feel overly packed. It doesn't feel, it doesn't feel bloated or anything like that for the space. It works really well, in my opinion. Ellison's style is really, it's quite beautiful. It's not overly purple or anything like that, but it's got a poetry to it. It's got a cadence to it that's really easy to read. That kind of fits with the tone, fits with the world, and with the characters. The characters are actually surprisingly complex, I think, for a short story of this length. It's kind of about the characters as much as it is about kind of what's, it's as I say, it's about torture. So you've got to kind of have an idea of, the characters, their state, their backstories, their current situation, etc. And their interpersonal relationships with one another, because they're, as I say, they're a group of 5, the 5 remaining humans. It's, as I say, it's got some really interesting questions to it in terms of, artificial intelligence, and philosophical questions about, as I say, about things like pain and suffering and torture, And yeah, it's, as I say, it's not a happy piece at all. It's quite harrowing in parts. It's, you know, Ellison doesn't really pull any punches in it, but the way that it's written makes it manageable and makes you want to keep reading. So yeah, first one, brilliant. Very happy that that came out as the first for Shorty September. Okay then, next up, I dipped into one of the Amazon Original collections. Most of these are from the Amazon Original Stories collections, by the way. But there's quite a good spread of which collections I managed to get into, thanks to the wheel of choice. So the next one was The Backbone of the World by Stephen Graham Jones, which is from the Trespass collection. And in this, we meet a character called Millie Two Bears, who lives alone in a trailer in the heart of the Blackfeet Nation of Montana. Her husband is in jail, and since he's been sent to prison, she's been kind of ostracised by the other people within the community. She's been kind of sort of kept on the outside of the reservation, basically. She's, you know, she's kind of very much on her own, and in addition to kind of feeling very much ousted, she's now got this problem with prairie dogs who've moved in on her patch, and so she decides to get rid of them, basically. And then a strange woman comes into Millie's life, and Millie can't really make head and tails of where this woman's from, what she's doing there, what her kind of agenda is, that kind of thing. And this war with the prairie dogs escalates as well, and it all takes a rather strange turn, is what I'll say. I won't go into any more than that. This one was a 3.5 out of 5. This one was decent. This one was good. I enjoyed this. It was quite funny in parts. It was quite bonkers. It did kept me intrigued right to the last, because I couldn't figure out where it was going. It's you know, it's kind of got some, it bounces around a little bit in terms of where you think it might be going, but it is hard to pin down. Again, you know, it's got some really good character work in the sort of the space of time that Stephen Graham Jones is asking you to be engaged with it. You know, it's Millie's backstory, Millie's sort of situation. Her character is well developed, I think. And yeah, and not just all the stuff with the prairie dogs is just a bit bonkers. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It's I've read some Stephen Graham Jones short stories before. I read some back in August. This one doesn't live up to the best in that collection, but it's still good. It still made me want to read some more Stephen Graham Jones in terms of his full-length novels. I do have a couple on my list that I will hopefully get to soonish. So yes, another successful one. Okay, next up then we've got another one from the Amazon Original Stories collections, this time from, I think, The Far Reaches, which is sci-fi, and this one was Slow Time Between the Stars by John Scalzi. And this one is about a sentient ship that's kind of launched on a last-ditch journey to find a new home for civilization, and it's equipped with the entirety of human knowledge. So it's got to travel like trillions of miles over like tens of thousands of years, looking for a planet where it can basically start the process of regrowing humans, kind of from scratch. It's not taken clones with it, it's taken the building blocks, if you like, of humanity. And you know, it's got plenty of time to think about life, the world, the universe, humanity, the vastness of the universe, you know, and it's as it has that time, and as it kind of processes all of the knowledge that it has on board, its perspective shifts, and it starts to think about not only everything that it's meant to be doing, but also what it should do. So kind of ethics, I guess, and morals. This one is a 5 out of 5. I thought this was excellent. I would absolutely listen to this again. I listened to this one because you get audio bundled in with this. All of these were on Kindle Unlimited, by the way, and also then have the Audible audio bundled in. The audio narration, I've forgotten who it is now, I'm afraid. I will pop it up on screen. Was excellent. Really worked really well. Again, it had some really lovely humour to it, but I think the thing I liked about this most is that it was so human. It was so warm. Like the AI itself was extremely human. And I think that was really successful in the way that Scalzi's written that you really do identify with, engage with, sympathise with the AI, the ship, essentially, on this. And it's asking some bigger questions, you know. Again, it's like it's a philosophy piece in a lot of respects. It's, as I say, it's kind of morals and ethics and knowledge and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, again, this asked a lot of big questions for its length, and it did it in a way that was extremely engaging, and I really like Scalzi's style. I really like the accessibility of it. I always worry when I'm reading stuff about kind of far reaches, essentially, when I'm, you know, reading science fiction that is about, you know, deep into the universe and kind of speculative stuff, that it's going to be a little bit dry, or that it's going to be a little bit kind of, it'll go over my head a bit, because I've found that before. I just can't kind of click into stuff. And so when somebody kind of manages to write something that has me completely enthralled from start to finish, then, you know, that's a huge thumbs up for me. So yeah, I will certainly be looking at some of Scalzi's other writings, some of Scalzi's novels, because, as I say, I was really impressed with this. This one was one of my favourites, I think, for Shorty September. Okay then, next up we go to Persephone by Lev Grossman, which I think was from the In the Shadows collection. And this one is about a teenager called Persephone, and ever since her dad disappeared a few years ago, she's kind of put up a wall in terms of her feelings. You know, that she doesn't acknowledge feelings she'd rather not face. There's no room in her life, in her brain, for pain or anger, and she's you know, she's just trying to get her head down and get through high school. But the bullying that she suffers there, the taunts, the disappointments, all that kind of thing, finally becomes too much, and this kind of bottled up emotion, these feelings, break loose essentially inside her, and she discovers a power that she never knew was there. This was 3.5 for me. I really enjoyed this. It was a really quick read. It was a fun read. It was kind of quite full of action. It was quite tense. It was quite mysterious. And I thought that the characters, certainly the character of Persephone and another student in it as well, were actually really well developed and really well realised on the page. I think the dialogue, particularly this sort of teenage dialogue, what teenagers actually talk like and sound like, etc., and what their thoughts might be. I think that was really, really well realised actually by Lev Grossman. I think he did a good job there, capturing that kind of spirit. So yeah, I mean, as I say, this one, there's not a huge amount to say about this other than it's a good, fun story, and it does everything it needs to do to keep you engaged. As I say, it's mysterious, it's funny, and it's quite full of action. Next up is Randomize by Andy Weir, and this is essentially a heist involving quantum computers and quantum theory and a futuristic casino and an inside job. That's pretty much all I'll say about it. So this was a 3. I enjoyed this. This was a good little story. I think I was a little disappointed with it because I kind of expect more from Andy Weir. It had some elements of Andy Weir's kind of trademark humour, but not enough for me. It was a bit flat. I think that's what I'd feel about it. It was still good. It was still good fun, and I liked some of the I certainly liked some of the science fiction elements to it in terms of the quantum theory, that kind of stuff, the quantum computers, the ideas within it. But the actual kind of characters and the story generally just felt a bit flat. The characters I kind of didn't feel particularly well developed. It was more about kind of the concept, I guess, this one. But yeah, it just wasn't engaging as some of the others because the characters weren't as well developed within the story. So yeah, not bad at all. But yeah, kind of hope for more with Andy Weir really after my wonderful experience with Project Hail Mary. Okay, next up something completely different, and this is Graceful Burdens by Roxanne Gay. This was a really interesting one actually. This is set in a society where the government decides who can and can't have children. So you're tested, for DNA tested when you reach puberty, and you are assigned to one of two groups. Either you are allowed to have children and will have children, or you're not allowed. And men are sterilised if they're not allowed, but women aren't. But there are baby libraries that are established where women can go and take a baby out on loan for 2 weeks, women who can't have children of their own. And the story follows one particular woman who does just this. Yeah, it's an interesting setup. It's definitely a really interesting setup. It's interesting that the characters in it are very engaging, again, very well formed, and it does ask some, big questions about eugenics, bodily autonomy, all that kind of stuff. It's it's quite it's on the nose in a lot of ways about current things, current situations in the world, and some of the sort of the bigger sort of questions of morality and ethics and stuff like that. Yeah, I gave this a 4. I thought this was excellent. This was really, really intriguing in terms of the world setup, and really well thought out, and really well explained within the short space of time that Roxanne Gay had on the page. And the characters, there's a few different characters. It shows you sort of the lives of a few different women, both those who are allowed to have kids, and those that aren't. And it's definitely a feminist piece, absolutely a feminist piece, and I wouldn't expect anything else from Roxanne Gay, to be honest. But it does inevitably follow one woman primarily, who takes a baby out of the baby library. It was really thought-provoking. It was a really thought-provoking, very well-written piece. And I've only come across Roxanne Gay through her non-fiction, but I did look up after reading this whether she's written more fiction. She has, and so I think I'm going to have to dip into it, because she's really got a very warm, very human, but also very astute kind of writing style. And yeah, as I say, I really enjoyed this. This was excellent. Next up, we've got Ungirls by Lauren Beukes, and this is from the Disorder collection. This is set in a future South Africa, I think, and a future world generally, where sex dolls are grown in labs, basically. So they are kind of part human, The sort of the body part is all kind of human, essentially. They can respond to pleasure and pain, but they have synthetic heads, which only contain only the very simplest AI, so that there's no chance of any kind of pesky sex doll uprising. And the story follows primarily Nat, who is an actor and sex worker who is providing the voices for these dolls. So yeah, this one was a 3 from me, a 3 out of 5. It was enjoyable. It was definitely a good read. It kept me engaged just purely because it was such a bonkers idea in terms of where it goes with this. But it is making certainly making comments on elements of the sex industry and sex work and things like that. And I know Beukes in the back of it has a note to say thanks very much to the to some of the sex workers in South Africa that she spoke to as part of the research. So she obviously went off and spoke to some folks in that industry to, like, you know, kind of get her facts right, and, you know, kind of get a sense of the sort of lives, the sort of problems, all that kind of stuff, the sort of dangers that come along with that work. So yeah, it's definitely a commentary, on that. I think there's certainly commentary on the idea of emasculation, the idea of kind of the incel. That I don't know a huge amount about, because I kind of stay out of that kind of conversation online. But there's definite, like, alluding to stuff like that in it. There are, as I say, that although we follow Nat mainly, it's like there are other characters in it that kind of bring in, I suppose, you know, commentary on various different elements of how we as a society today view sex, view women, view relationships, view entitlement, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but it was a bit all over the place. That's what to say about it. It's like its structure was a bit off for me. It was, as I say, it's a 3. It was still decent. It was still an enjoyable read, and it was still thought-provoking. But yeah, it just the structure and stuff felt a little bit all over the place. It jumped around quite a bit. And I think for a short story, for me, there were too many characters in it. It was hard to kind of keep track of who's where's the relationship to who, and because they're kind of disparate, and it's like, yeah, it was a bit jarring at times, and it was just a bit confusing at times. But as I say, it didn't make it bad. It's just that was the flaw. That was one of the major flaws with it for me. Okay, next up is Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemison. And this follows an explorer, a soldier type character, who is sent back to a climate-ravaged Earth to gather information and essentially some biological materials to take back to his own planet, to be used basically by his world's finest, the rulers, the kind of the ruling class, who fled Earth centuries ago. And the mission comes with a warning: expect a graveyard world when you get there. But as he finds, it's not a graveyard. There are people living there, and the Earth is actually in pretty good shape. And he starts to question what he's been told. Yeah, this one is a 5 out of 5 for me. I loved this one. This one is potentially my favourite read of Shorty September. Certainly my favourite in terms of kind of a more positive tone. I mean, Harlan Ellison is one of my favourites as well, but this one, I really did love this one. This is told essentially from, like, it's one side of a conversation. You don't ever hear from the soldier. What you're hearing is kind of the instructions that are being given to him by his superiors and his handler, if you like. And you also get some speech from some of the people he meets on Earth as well. But you only ever get one side of the conversation. And you get to learn about where he's from, the fact that the founders of his world are essentially the people who ruined Earth in the first place. And yeah, you know, he's one of this sort of class of beings who is promised his own skin, essentially, when he gets back after doing this mission, because at the moment he is essentially just kind of a human consciousness in a suit, in a kind of a protective suit. It doesn't have skin. It doesn't look human. And yeah, the handler is very much kind of, you know, they are fully in agreement with the way that their world works, in terms of some people are you know, are entitled to certain things, and other people are worthless, essentially, and are only there to be slaves, things like that. You know, it's a pretty horrible society. It sounds like it's a very unequal society where they come from. And yeah, I mean, it's not dialogue. You know, the one side of the dialogue that we actually hear is very well written, is very funny, whilst also being extremely sharp, and also quite difficult to listen to in some bits, because it's pretty horrible. You know, the sort of things that this society that he comes from believes are pretty horrible. But I listened to this, and it was read by Jason Isaacs, who did an absolutely fantastic job with this, I have to say. And that may be one reason why I loved it so much, because it was so well narrated. But I think I would have loved this anyway. I think I just really liked the idea of it. I really liked the way that it was told through this one side of the conversation. I liked the sort of twist in it. And I liked the fact that you could get a real sense of the character of this soldier without ever hearing from them. That it was all about their action and other people's response to their actions that gave you a real sense of who they were and who they wanted to be as well. You know, their reaction to finding out all of this new information that had been kept from them. And what they were going to do about that. Yeah, I can see that this one won an award, I think, for the best short story. I forget which award, but it certainly won an award, I know that much. And I'm not surprised. This was absolutely excellent. As I say, I loved this. And N.K. Jemison has absolutely gone on my list as somebody that I need to read more of. Because if the quality of writing is anything close to this, then I think I'm really going to like her work. So yeah, that one, absolutely excellent. Okay, next up we've got Void by Veronica Roth. And this follows a janitor, essentially, Ace, on a transport ship, the Redundancy. And it's cut off from communication. And it's effectively, it's kind of like a cruise ship, really, as well. And a murder happens. Ace is called to deal with the body, and she takes it upon herself to figure out who murdered this passenger, a passenger that she knew, that she had met, and who she had liked. And so I won't go any further than that, because it is essentially a murder mystery. This was a 3 out of 5 for me. It was decent, but it wasn't anything special. It was, you know, it was well plotted. It was solid in terms of its kind of character work, but it was a bit predictable, and it was a bit formulaic. There was nothing inherently really wrong with it. It was a little bit forgettable. It won't be one that will stick with me for a major length of time. It's you know, it was a decent little read. It was fun, and it took me a couple of hours to get through, if that. And I liked the premise of it. I liked the murder mystery sort of side of things. Ace was a good character, although all of the characters were very kind of surface level. They were kind of archetypal. they were, they were good for what they were, but they weren't anything more than that. So yeah, as I say, decent enough writing. There wasn't anything about the writing that kind of was particularly individual, I would have to say. It hasn't made me kind of want to go and try more Veronica Roth stuff. It's as I say, it's solid, but it's not that it was meh, because otherwise it would have got a lower rating. But yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. I guess it was just decent. It's one of those where I can't really say anything really negative about it, but I haven't really got anything majorly positive to say about it in terms of like, oh yeah, this was great or anything like that. This one was just it was decent. Next up, we've got In Bloom by Paul Tremblay, and this follows first of all a journalist, Heidi Cohen, who is in Cape Cod investigating sources of recurring toxic algae blooms along the coast, and she meets up with a local named Jimmy who has his own theory about these algae blooms, and he recounts a story of something that happened to him when he was a boy, a story that he's never forgotten, and that he's still trying to find answers to today. But is Heidi ready for that story? This one is out of a new collection actually called Creature Feature, which is all horror, and I've given this a rating of 4.5 out of 5. I really liked this. It wasn't quite enough to give it the 5, but it was very close. This has got a lot of referencing in it, kind of popular culture, comic book referencing. It's told from the two perspectives that I particularly liked as well. Both characters were well realised. I listened to this as well, and it was read by, each perspective was read by a different actor, and that worked really well. One of the things I'll say about this actually is that there's a huge element of it which is about baseball, because Jimmy's dad his story kind of revolves around. His father, he had a difficult relationship with, was huge on baseball, absolutely massive on baseball, and Jimmy was kind of like pushed into playing baseball as a kid. So there's quite a lot about baseball and about that kind of culture in it, certainly for a Brit. Bearing in mind we don't have baseball over here, we have cricket, damn it. And baseball isn't one of those sports which I'm particularly interested in learning about, to be honest. As I say, we've got cricket over here. I'll stick to my cricket if I want anything like that, anything long with stats. So usually, oftentimes baseball references, and certainly a lot of baseball references, kind of go over my head and kind of sort of make me go, ugh, not more baseball. But this didn't. The way that it was done, the way that it was worked into the story, and how it was so integral to the characters' relationships and actually showing their characters what they were like, worked really well. The horror elements of it, when you got there, it ramped up to it really well. There was a sense of something ominous was going to occur, but it was a slow burn up to actually what that was, and that really worked really well in terms of the tension, in terms of the intrigue, and the actual, once you found out kind of what the threat is, essentially, that bit was really that was creepy as well. There's some really kind of creepy descriptions in there. It's not gory, but just really unsettling. I have only read or listened to one Paul Tremblay in the past. I had the audiobook of The Head Full of Ghosts, and I really didn't get on with it. And I'm pretty sure, I've said this before on the channel, I'm pretty sure that was because of the audio narration. And having read this now, this has definitely made me want to go back and read some more of Paul Tremblay's novels. But yeah, I certainly think I could get on with Tremblay if I read some of his stuff. And finally, we've got Walking to Aldebaran by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This one is a science fiction novella, which I had on audiobook through the Audible Plus catalogue, and it was narrated by Adrian Tchaikovsky as well. And in this we meet Gary Rendell, who is an astronaut who has found himself lost and isolated on a strange alien artifact. He's a member of a team that was sent in to investigate this weird thing that showed up in space. And it turns out it's a massive tunnel-like structure with seemingly endless corridors leading deeper into its interior. And as he explores, he discovers strange and inexplicable phenomena, including surreal landscapes, bizarre creatures, weird shifts in gravity. And Gary becomes increasingly disoriented. Time itself seems to kind of behave strangely. He encounters other explorers from different worlds, other alien explorers who have also been drawn into this mysterious structure. And he also has encounters with other bizarre and hostile alien creatures that definitely pose a threat. And interspersed with his kind of journey, because it's all from Gary's perspective, interspersed with his kind of stuff about the here and now, what's happening in this structure, we also get flashbacks to his life on Earth, and leading up to the expedition to this artifact. And through that you kind of get sort of more of a sense of his character and the political sort of situation, socio-political situation of like Earth as well at the time. So this one this one is another 4.5 out of 5. I ripped through this. This is the longest of all of the stories that I read. This was just about 3.5 hours. And yeah, I ripped through it in one sitting. Once I started it, I was like, yeah, no, I'm listening to this in one go. It's very, very funny. It's absolutely my sense of humour. It's quite quippy. It's a bit corny at times in a kind of a bit of a roll your eyes dad joke way, but not like cringeworthy generally. You know, most of it it's funny because it's, as I say, because it's a bit corny. It's got surreal sense of humour to it as well. It's bonkers. It's bonkers in parts. I particularly, and it's quite British. In fact, it's very British in its humour. I mean, Adrian Tchaikovsky is actually originally from Woodall Spa, which is a little town which is very close to where I grew up. So he's kind of my neck of the woods. But yeah, it's very British. It's very, very intriguing. You do wonder what this place is, you know, what's going on, strange things are happening. And you know, that intrigue is presented through Gary. You know, it's Gary talking to you, the reader, essentially, or talking to himself is how he puts it. And he refers to this entity, essentially, that he's talking to as Toto. So, you know, but it is like he's speaking to you. There's almost a fourth wall breaking type situation on there. It's very descriptive, but that's not a negative. It's very, very good in evoking the sense of space, of setting, the alien structure, in terms of its not only what he sees when he can see, because it's very dark in there most of the time, but what he feels. You know, it's the tactile nature of it as well. And his descriptions of the aliens that he meets, both friends and foes, are brilliant. You know, the imagination from Tchaikovsky on the aliens is great. They're really good fun. You know, it's a really good fun piece. It gets more bonkers as it goes on. It definitely gets more bonkers. It starts off, you know, kind of not too weird at all, really, other than the intrigue of what the hell this alien structure is. But as it goes on, it does go off on one a little bit in terms of its bonkersness. I don't mind that at all. But yeah, it's quite a strange one by the end. Negatives wise, the humour doesn't always land. There are some bits where I'm just like, no, you've taken it too far now in terms of the corniness or the kind of the quippiness or what have you. Some of it doesn't land for me, but very rarely. The audio, although it was generally very good, there are some awful accents, but there's so little of them that they weren't kind of immersion breaking, or they kind of just made me laugh really in terms of how bad they were. As I say, it was the longest one that I listened to, but it didn't feel it at all. As I say, I ripped through this, and although I've had some kind of Adrian Tchaikovsky again on my wish list for a while. I've heard the name before plenty of times, and I've got Children of Time on my list. That is now getting bumped up the priority list. Because, as I say, I really, really enjoyed the style of this, the writing style. It was a very human style. It was, as I say, it was very warm. There's some great action bits in it. There's some great tense bits in it, some creepy bits, and some really good character work as well. Really good character work. So another successful one to finish Shorty September off with. So that is everything I got through for Shorty September. As you might have noticed, I didn't head for the prompts for Shorty September. I just decided I just was going to let the wheel pick and let the wheel pick. So I won't have made many of the prompts for the event. But yeah, I wasn't aiming for that anyway. But I've thoroughly enjoyed Shorty September, and all being well, if it runs again next year, I will definitely be diving back in. And I will probably dive back into some of the Amazon original stories in the collections that I didn't get to before that, because they're really good. I think they're a really good way to kind of test out some of the authors that you might be interested in, but don't necessarily want to commit to a full novel from to start with. You just want to get a sense of their style, stuff like that. So that's been really, really useful for me as well. Thank you very much for watching today, folks. Did you take part in Shorty September? If you did, let me know in the comments how you got on and what your favourite reads were for the event. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming very soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.